This podcast may contain explicit language. Welcome to the Greatest Movie of All Time podcast, the show that uses a unique grading style to redefine what the greatest movies are. I'm Tom Duncan.
And I'm Dana Duncan.
Tonight, for our 251st episode, we discuss Coal Miner's Daughter from 1980, directed by Michael Apted, written by Tom Rickman, music by Owen Bradley, starring Sissy Spacek as Loretta Lynn, Tommy Lee Jones as Doolittle Lynn, Beverly D'Angelo as Patsy Cline, Levon Helm as Ted Webb, William Sanderson as Lee Dollarhide, and Phyllis Boyens as Clara Ramey Webb. Background for the movie: Coal Miner's Daughter was released on March 7th, 1980, which makes this the 45th anniversary. On a budget of $15 million, the film would gross roughly $67 million, finishing at number 7 for the worldwide box office of 1980. The film was met with widespread acclaim, especially for Spacek's portrayal of Lynn, and would go on to be nominated for 7 Oscars: Best Picture, Adapted Screenplay, Art Direction, Cinematography, Film Editing, and Sound, with Spacek winning Best Actress for that year. The soundtrack of the film, featuring tracks of both Spacek and D'Angelo's performances from the film, went on to be certified gold and would hit number 2 on the Billboard Top Country Albums in 1980. The film was recognized in 2006 by American Film Institute on their 100 Years, 100 Cheers list at number 70. In 2019, the film was selected for preservation in the United States National Film Registry. Coal Miner's Daughter currently holds an 85% among critics on Rotten Tomatoes, an 84 score on Metacritic, and a 3.7 out of 5 on Letterboxd. So as we begin each week, Dad, what is your relationship to this film?
Well, I'm trying to remember if I saw this at the theater or if I went and watched it on HBO. And I'm pretty sure, in retrospect, I would have went to see it at the theater, because it would have been about the time that was about all I was going to be doing, was going to the movies, which I tended to do pretty regularly.
This is a first-time watch for me. I think the reason that I put it on the list, other than the fact that it was one of the few movies with an anniversary in March that I could put onto the list and it would make sense or fit within the schedule, is when we talked about Loretta Lynn a couple of years ago for In Memoriam. And so this just kind of generally stuck in my head as a movie that we could maybe go back to. Other than that, I have really no connection or affinity to the movie outside of this being the first watch.
I think this is the second or third time I've seen it.
Okay. But it's probably been a couple of decades, right?
At least. I think it had to have been, I might have seen it on HBO as a second time watch in the 80s. I'll bet it's been 30 years since I've seen it at least.
Okay. So I had a very difficult time with what is usually our next question. What is this movie about? The rough outline of the plot to me would basically indicate what the movie's about, which tends to be the conversation for most musical biopics. They tend to be about the same things. In this one, at least, there's kind of a conversation about what the relationship is between the two primary people in the movie, Doolittle and Loretta. But you could also say, much like every other star biopic type thing, it's the conversation about whether or not there are true drawbacks to stardom and fame, which 45 plus years on kind of feels tired.
Yeah, okay.
I don't say this to denigrate the film. I do actually think I enjoyed it, although mostly the second half as opposed to the first half, which I found very slow. But there's nothing that's terribly original about this that I haven't seen basically in at least one Oscar nominee for the last 10 years.
Part of this is it's the dynamic of the fact that she had the talent, but had all of the acumen, the savviness to get her career started. And then once he got her career started, he was no longer needed. And so he started having all these problems of being the appendage. And that dynamic is what the film is really about. It's not just about her, but it's about him coming to terms with what the relationship is going to be now that she's famous. I think that is a subplot of this film that really kind of resonates more to me than anything, because you see that a lot in these situations. It's one of the reasons why I think a lot of actors and actresses in Hollywood divorce, is because as if they're both acting, one's career rises, the others fall, and the jealousy becomes too much, or the feelings of inadequacy rise too much, and that ends up breaking up the marriage. They were able to stay together in this particular situation because he knew that he needed to do something else, which is he ended up working as an auto mechanic, and then eventually just being with the kids, a house husband.
Well, I find it kind of extraordinary that they did stay together, because that tends to be the case, especially with anybody where they came up together and one just seemingly kind of outgrows the other. And we see that in all sorts of careers. It's not just necessarily limited to music. I mean, athletics is part of that, but anything where there's a high professional degree, attorneys often have a similar thing where one might outgrow the other, be on a better career trajectory. And there's just a certain jealousy and inadequacy that kind of grows out of it, an imposter syndrome that you obviously can't stomach from somebody who's supposed to be your partner. So the high degree of divorce among couples like this, I can understand, just from what you need in a relationship not being always the same thing. So to me, part of the celebration of the movie is somehow them working through their differences, even though they're two very flawed individuals.
Correct. I mean, they came at it from different angles. She came at it as completely naive. He was much more worldly, but she had the talent and he didn't. And so they had to come to terms with these things. And together they were able to create what's considered a country music legend.
So we're recording this before the Oscars this year in 2025, where it is a distinct possibility that Timothée Chalamet might win for playing Bob Dylan. We obviously have, in recent Oscars past, Rami Malek winning as a musical biopic. Spacek wins Best Actress for this role, but these movies also tend to have a high degree of play within box offices. They draw fans. I mean, one of the top performing films outside of IP last year was the weird Bob Marley film, which I can't remember that many people seeing, but apparently they did because it performed well.
Yeah.
So why are musical biopics so popular?
Because it's ultimately the Horatio Alger, the American dream, rise from nothing to stardom. I mean, we're talking about two people living in coal country in Kentucky, dirt poor, end up living in a mansion in Nashville and becoming one of the most popular stars of music in the country. Why would you not be inclined to like that kind of thing? Because I think everybody kind of fancies in some way themselves rising to that level. And I think it's just a feel-good story that people love, and especially Americans.
But not all of these movies are really like that, though. In this particular case, sure. But A Complete Unknown is not necessarily popular because it's a rags to riches story about Bob Dylan. And Bohemian Rhapsody also is not the same thing. Ray, Walk the Line, also did very well at the box office, and neither of those is really about that. That's more about flawed characters. Is it just simply they want a further connection with the music by understanding who the artist is?
I think that could be part of it. I think that does make some sense. And truly, people who are big Bob Dylan fans went to see it. I went to see it simply because I thought it would be a decent film. I didn't know a whole lot about Bob and his music, so I went for that reason. watching Ray. I knew nothing about Ray Charles's career before he was Ray Charles, where he came from or how he rose up through the ranks. And, I think you end up you see what they've done to get there. I think you end up having more respect for them as artists because of what they achieved.
There's a part of me from a cynical side of view that thinks it's IP without IP. You have the name recognition and the branding there to say, oh, we're going to take this semi-well-known figure that has some name recognition that we think you're going to go see about their life, but we don't have to really do a whole lot of visual effects or some of these other things. And we can basically, the biggest hindrance they have from a budgetary standpoint is licensing the music. And on top of it, I will say most of the estates are contributory to a lot of these things, like the Elvis movie a couple of years ago. So it's just basically a puff piece.
I mean, look at it this way. You forgot one biopic, Weird Al Yankovic. They did one. They did one on the Roku channel,
starring himself. Yeah.
No, it wasn't. It was Daniel Radcliffe.
Oh, that's right. Oh, I forgot that he did that. Okay. Yeah, but it was still in concert with Weird Al. But at least he has a good sense of humor about himself, and he didn't take it too seriously.
Well, it was supposed to be his life story, and it was accurate.
Okay, sure.
I've only seen pieces of it. I should sit down and watch it once because I like Weird Al, and that was about.
I've heard it's very good. So
yeah, he hit about the time I was in high school, so he's kind of one of my contemporaries. His music got really popular when I was in college, and he started doing all the parodies. I Lost on Jeopardy.
Like a surgeon?
Like a sturgeon, yeah.
Not sturgeon, surgeon.
Surgeon, I know. We changed it to sturgeon, but anyway.
Okay. Well, let's dig a little deeper into the movie. Do you have our plot summary ready for us?
I do. Coal Miner's Daughter is a biographical drama about the life of country music legend Loretta Lynn. Raised in poverty in the coal mining town of Butcher Hollow, Kentucky, Loretta Sissy Spacek marries Doolittle Lynn, Tommy Lee Jones, at just age 15. Encouraged by Doo, she begins singing and writing songs, eventually rising to fame in the male-dominated country music industry. As her career soars, she struggles with the pressures of stardom, family responsibilities, and personal hardships. Featuring standout performances and authentic musical moments, the film is a heartfelt tribute to Lynn's resilience and talent.
Thank you. Did you know? Sissy Spacek was reluctant to take on the lead role, instead favoring a project by Nicholas Regg. She had insisted on doing her own singing for the film in hopes of scaring the producers off. The real Loretta Lynn prematurely announced that Spacek was going to play her on a talk show, so Spacek was torn between the decision to star in the film or choose the other project. She was advised by her mother-in-law to pray for a sign on what to do that evening, which she did. Spacek later went for a drive with her husband in her mother's car, where the radio was tuned into a classical music station that changed formats every evening. As the car pulled out of the parking garage, Coal Miner's Daughter by Loretta Lynn came on the radio. Spacek then accepted the role. Did you know? Loretta Lynn is said to have fainted when she saw Levon Helm in full makeup and wardrobe because of his amazing resemblance to her real father. Did you know? The set used for Loretta Lynn's parents' house was reassembled in Hurricane Mills, which is Loretta Lynn's current house and is on the Hurricane Mills Ranch tour. Did you know? According to Loretta Lynn, her husband Doolittle wanted nothing to do with Tommy Lee Jones, who was playing him until shortly before shooting began in Butcher Holler. Jones rented a Jeep, got drunk on moonshine, and went tearing through the town in the vehicle only to get arrested for drunk driving, beaten up for resisting arrest, and jailed. Doolittle liked him immediately after that. And with that, we will take our first break, and we will be right back. Before we jump back into the episode, next week for our 251st episode, we welcome back Ryan Luis Rodriguez of the Coolness Chronicles to discuss Aaron Brockovich from 2000 for its 25th anniversary. Directed by Steven Soderbergh, written by Susanna Grant, music by Thomas Newman, starring Julia Roberts, Albert Finney, and Aaron Eckhart. You won't want to miss that one, so watch ahead of the show by searching the Real Good app to find where it's streaming for you. That's REELGOOD. And before we get into best performances, I did want to give you a little bit of an update. We did have a very nice response, feedback, something to that effect, from our good friend Kieran B. over at the BPC, who did catch our episode on the Oscars today. So I'll just read that here. Please extend to Dana my appreciation for your Oscar episode. I thought you both really crushed it. Even more props for doing it live. You both articulated your points super well. The format was very organized and laid out in a great way. You didn't lose any steam by the end, and the little mini dives into each movie I thought were all well expressed, whether I agreed with them or not. It was a total victory of an episode.
Nice, thank you.
I will also say, Tom, I think you're going to be taking home the Oscars bet this year. So confident that I will back the horse and will personally watch this Nick Cage movie I've never heard of if Dana wins in solidarity.
Okay.
I wanted to put that out on the internet just to reinforce that. Not that I couldn't look back through my messages later, but, and I will say that much like Simon Says, which hopefully I had enough time to edit and put out on Sunday before this airs, but it shares one common trait with Left Behind. They both have 0% among critics on Rotten Tomatoes and a 19% tomato score among the audience.
Yeah.
So it's exact same scoring.
Yeah. Okay.
So, all right. We left off at best performance. Who did you have down?
I know this is going to go against the general trait, but I have Tommy Lee Jones, actually.
God damn it. You did the same thing I did.
I thought his performance was much more layered. He had to have more going on around him. I just thought his performance was stellar. I don't understand why he wasn't nominated for Best Supporting.
Of the two primary actors in this film, his is the performance where I said, wow. And while she did her own singing, which she should be commended for, boy, that in hindsight, and I know that we're not on the 1980s or 1980 year revisionist almanac right now. And Andrew, don't take this as a sign that I want to do this here, because I probably don't. But Mary Tyler Moore losing out to Sissy Spacek, Ordinary People versus Coal Miner's Daughter. I mean, really? Yeah, no. I think Spacek has had much better roles than this. I think she was kind of mostly one note when she wasn't singing, just personally. That doesn't stop me from putting her as my best secondary, because she did do the difficult part of singing and kind of embodying the role. And I'm a little bit further removed from kind of knowing who Loretta Lynn is. So it's harder for me to appreciate kind of the intricacies of the impersonation embodiment kind of characteristics comparatively. But Tommy Lee Jones, damn.
I know. I think in retrospect, one of the things we forget is how good of an actor he really is.
Yeah. What was he in between like now in 1980 and when he gets The Fugitive? Because I think The Fugitive is like the real turning point for him, where his career kind of takes off and he starts playing a lot of lawmen and certain other older roles, like he's in Space Cowboys and things of that nature. But up and through that point, there's this gap between like 13 years where
he was in quite a few films.
Okay.
And in fact, that's one of the reasons why I came up with my rating for impact and significance, was the fact that this basically launched his career. He had done one other movie that I had seen called The Betsy with Sir Laurence Olivier the year before. But that really didn't do that well. So this film launched his career. He did a series of films, nothing that was big, well known and well stocked, but he was pretty much working and doing a film or two every year up until he was cast in The Fugitive and won an Oscar for supporting Oscar for that.
Which we kind of said he shouldn't have gotten last week.
Yeah, well, I know, but he was good in it.
Sometimes you have multiple great performances in the same year and you can't award multiple people.
Yeah, I don't think they allow ties.
They did one time, at least that I'm aware of.
Oh, when was that?
So Best Actor was a tie between Frederick Marsh and somebody else in like 1931.
Okay.
He won it for playing Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde, I'm pretty sure, and I can't remember who he tied with. So there have been at least some ties in the history of the Oscars, because I don't think that's the only one. But it was apparently very long ago, so I don't know if that establishes precedent.
Yeah.
All right, so who did you have as your best secondary?
I had Sissy Spacek. I mean, she did a nice job, and she really did embody Loretta Lynn. My parents grew up, I grew up listening to country music. So I knew Loretta Lynn. She was teamed up a lot in the early 70s with Conway Twitty. They had they did duets. I knew the songs. I knew her performance. So.
Most charismatic?
Beverly D'Angelo.
I will say, for not a big country music fan, I didn't hate the music.
No, quite frankly, if Patsy Cline had lived, I think she would have been one of the first crossover artists out of country music. She had the look of, she wore the suits and looked more traditional, didn't have the rhinestones and such in her music selection. I mean, her biggest hit was Crazy, which was written by Willie Nelson. And in part, the reason why she did it and no one else wanted to is it was outside the norm of, I think it's 3 chords for country music. It was much more complex, and she was willing to tackle it because it was a lot more challenging to sing. So I think she would have crossed over. And the fact is that Beverly D'Angelo did a pretty darn good job of sounding like Patsy Cline. And I always have had a thing for Beverly D'Angelo since I was a kid or a teenager. And yeah.
Saw Vacation?
Yes, I saw Vacation.
I see. That's not a leading statement at all or anything.
Yeah.
Moving on. Best scene. I'll be honest, this is a movie that isn't about scenes so much as it's an overall aesthetic. And there are so many small, quick scenes that it's hard for me to nominate really 5 of them that were standout moments. I have the wedding night. I have Daddy's funeral. I have traveling to radio stations. I have meeting Patsy. And then I have the breakdown on stage, which is kind of the climax of the film.
Mm-hmm.
But did you have any that you really wanted to add?
No.
Okay. For me, the best scene is the breakdown on stage. It's the one that I could probably point to the most of where there's real development in her character. And frankly, it's kind of a moment ahead of time where it's somebody appreciating their own well-being and mental health as a famous person, which we're much more comfortable and accepting of now. But to have this 45 years ago as being something that might be generally accepted by the population, I'm not sure this would have necessarily been widely accepted in the way that it is now.
No, it was not looked upon favorably. You should just troop through it. Just, buckle down. I don't remember specifically her need to take time off and all this, but it was probably controversial. And I think this part of the film was probably controversial in and of itself. But for me, the best scene was traveling to the radio stations because that's really the point to the film where everything changes. It changes from her being the poor country girl to now rising up and becoming a major star.
I would agree. It's kind of the takeoff of the film. For me, the first 45 minutes to an hour is kind of slow and meandering, and Yeah, they spend a lot of time kind of developing the background of these characters, but it's not very interesting.
Yeah.
So I guess as a turning point in the movie, I can see where you're going with that. It's just, though, in some ways, kind of a montage, save for the one kind of semi-meltdown that she has on the radio DJ. Favorite scene, though, is traveling to the radio stations. Again, partially because the movie picks up at that point.
Well, I like the little talking about getting horny and then the station manager has his rant. And then you realize that things have actually taken off when you're, I can't remember where, number 7, or was it?
14.
14 on the charts. So he'll have to play you.
Yeah, you get forgiven if people demand it.
Mm-hmm. The star of the baseball team always gets better privileges than the number 26 man. That's also my favorite scene.
Most Indelible, I had a really difficult time selecting anything because even though I was putting my notes together immediately following watching the film, I'm like, tomorrow, am I going to remember anything significant about this film? I think I remember the overall entirety of the film, but any singular moment, I found it very difficult to find something that I really thought, man, if I think back on this in 2 weeks, what am I going to remember about this film? The only thing that really came to mind, and I was grasping a little bit at straws, is just the two of them arguing.
Yeah.
So did you have something better than that?
I had the breakdown on stage because that to me is where she's achieved her point and now it's consumed her. Everything leads to this point and now it's gone just too far. And so that's, to me, is the most indelible moment.
All right, well, that looks like a good spot for our second break. We will be right back. Before we jump back into the episode, did you know all of our newest episodes are also now in video format? That's right, you can see my resting nerd face and all of Dana's famous OKs in pristine high definition. And that's not all. We're also on the cusp of a few different live stream events coming up in the near future. We just had our Oscars preview live streamed last week, as well as our post-Oscars reaction show that was this last Monday. You can check those both out on our YouTube channel. That's youtube.com/@GModePodcast. And we have a whole bunch of other stuff coming up, a James Bond rankings live stream series, and much, much more. If you want to check that all out, just head to youtube.com/@GModePodcast and find us there. And if you do, please like the video or subscribe to us. We would really appreciate it. Dad, do we have anyone to remember this week?
Yes. Roberta Flack, 88, American singer. Killing Me Softly with his song, The First Time Ever I Saw Your Face, and Feel Like Making Love, Grammy winner, 1973 and 1974. Robert John, 79, American singer, Sad Eyes, If You Don't Want My Love. Chris Jasper, 73, American Hall of Fame singer. The Isley Brothers, Isley Jasper and Isley, songwriter, Caravan of Love, and keyboardist and producer. Lynn Marie Stewart, 78, American actress. Pee-wee's Playhouse, It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia, and American Graffiti. Jerry Butler, 85, American Hall of Fame soul singer-songwriter. Only the Strong Survive, He Will Break Your Heart. Musician, The Impressions, and he was also a politician. Peter Jason, 80, American actor. They Live, Deadwood, Mortal Kombat. Olive Sturgis, 91, Canadian-born American actress. The Kettles in the Ozarks, The Raven, and Requiem for a Gunfighter. Al Trautwig, 68, American sports broadcaster. Cool Runnings, Olympic broadcaster, NHL studio host. John Lawler, 83, American actor. SOB, Phyllis, The Facts of Life, and Wyatt Earp. Michelle Trachtenberg, 39, American actress. Buffy the Vampire Slayer, Harriet the Spy, Gossip Girl.
And Eurotrip.
Yes. I think that was the last thing I saw her in.
And so we remember these here fondly with a moment of silence in their honor. Thank you. All right, let's go to best funniest lines. Loretta Lynn. Shoot, we've been driving so much, I don't know where I am half the time, but it's fun. We sing and talk and do. That's my husband. He'll get to acting horny. What? And the more I laugh, the hornier he gets, and then he'll say, Loretta, spread me up another one of them bologna sandwiches.
Loretta. And stop that growling. You sound like a big old bar.
Loretta Lynn. Doolittle, I can't play that thing. Doolittle. Well, most people can't till they learn how, damn it.
Patsy Cline. People want to know who you've been sleeping with that you've been on so many times. Loretta Lynn. Who's been saying that? Patsy Cline. Girls that have been sleeping with everybody and still haven't been on yet.
Doolittle Lynn. What we got to do next is figure out what to do next.
Loretta Lynn. Well, I was born the coal miner's daughter in a cabin on a hill in Butcher Holler. We were poor, but we had love. That's the one thing my daddy made sure of. He shoveled coal to make a poor man's dollar.
Lee Dollarhide. Do, if you're born in the mountains, you got 3 choices. Coal mine, moonshine, or moving on down the line.
I'm out.
As am I. All right, let's move to the Stanley rubric. We've got legacy up first. This is a measure of the legacy of the film as split between the industry and the audience, roughly 5 years after the film came out until today. So roughly from 1985 to today, what is the legacy of this film? We get this to a total of 10 points, 5 and 5 each. Dad, would you like to go first or second?
I'll go first. I think the industry likes the film or has held the film a little bit. It has been on a couple of the AFI rankings.
It was on one.
One. Okay. So I went with a 3.5 for the industry because it did have the Academy Award. I think it is held up as being somewhat of a early successful or a biopic that kind of made a lot of the other biopics much more marketable and likely to go into production. The public, I went with a 4 simply because about 40% of the staff in our thing had seen the film and were familiar with it, which for a 45-year-old film, I was a little bit surprised with. So I'm at a 7.5.
Good, because then we're drastically different. Because while I know that it is a staple of the show anymore to ask our staff whether or not they've seen it, again, even though there's an age and basically there's an age diversity, the rest of the diversity among that staff group is not particularly high. They're a little bit biased in the fact that this is a country music biopic, and a lot of them are very familiar with that background from life experience and rural community living and such. I think that had it not been that Loretta Lynn passed away 3 years ago, that we would be talking that much about this film, because I had never heard of it. I was not familiar with anything about it. I was not really familiar with her at all. So this film to me would have been a footnote in history. I would have never known that Sissy Spacek won an Oscar at all. And again, I'm a film fan. So in that respect, one AFI list and submission into the National Film Registry does not place it for me higher than a 2.5. And again, outside of the prospects of The Office, where there are a lot of country music fans, I think the general public and the actual film fans, the cinephiles, probably have not seen this. Now, I might be completely off base on this, but I had a 1.5. So I have a 4.
Well, see, I don't. I can see maybe going down a little bit on my score, but I don't think it's anywhere. I think if you walked up to somebody and asked, are you familiar with the term coal miner's daughter? they're going to remember that there was a film, and they're going to remember Loretta Lynn. I think about anybody over 40 specifically is going to remember those. But okay, I'll come down 0.5 on my score to give a 7, but that's where I'm staying.
All right, so that will be a 5.5 average between the two of us. Then let's go to impact and significance. This is a measure of the impact and significance of the film in the moment that it was made, roughly then cascading out for about 5 years. So the 5 years we just discounted for legacy. So from 1980 to about 1985, what is the legacy and impact of this film? We split this category as well between the audience at large and the industry for a total of 10 points. You went first on the last category. I will go first here. I think this had a much greater impact in the moment that it was made. Is it enough to get it past maybe a 4 on the audience side? Not so much. I think there were much bigger films in this moment. I don't think this was a particularly strong movie-going year. I think it was well attended, but there are just films that were bigger in that moment that I think had more captivation of the attention of the American public. And while this was a recognizable figure in the time and space that it had, I do think that there were bigger movies. That being said, on an industry perspective, it was nominated for a lot of stuff. It got Sissy Spacek her Oscar. It did promote the career of Tommy Lee Jones that you said before. So I do think it has some credence there. I have a 4 and a 4 for an 8.
For the industry, I have 4.5 because, again, it launched Tommy Lee Jones. I think the industry really kind of looked at this and came to a conclusion that there was a lot more here, and that the whole country music atmosphere was different and was potentially ripe for making other films, doing biopics, etc.
Okay, and how many did they start doing after that?
Yeah, all right. Again, I think it did kind of really cement or launch the careers both of Tommy Lee Jones, and I think Sissy Spacek became much more solidly recognized at that point in time.
I think she was already a star who was commanding a lot of attention after she did Carrie.
Well, I think this furthered it. For the public, I went with a 4.5 simply because the album, it was 7 gross, which was for a story about a country music star was huge. And the fact that the album was second country music album was gold. I think it was 17 over the Billboard ranking for the year.
It might have been.
So, I mean, it had staying power. And so I'm going with that. So I'm at a 9 for that, for impact and significance.
Man, do you grade on a curve. You find such subjective reasons sometimes. You keep claiming that you're objective in all of this, but you're grading up. Normally, I think you held against Schindler's last week for being number 9 in a much bigger box office year where the number 1 movie was Runaway, the biggest hit, and there wasn't that much difference between 9 and 2. This week, you're trying to grade up that number 7 for a country star music. I mean, last week, Schindler's at number 9 was a much more difficult sell. Hey, go to a 3-hour, just devastating emotional film and see how things go.
All right, I'll drop my public to a 4 if it makes you happy.
I just think that sometimes you are so inconsistent with some of this stuff.
Okay. Whatever.
Anyway, so that's an 8.5 average between the two of us. Let's go to Novelty. This is a measure of the originality of the movie on anything associated with the movie. Usually it tends to be about writing, but it can be about many different things. And then on the execution of the movie. We divide this category 5 and 5 points between the two of those for a total of 10. Since you usually lead Classicness, I'll go first again here. Musical biopics, even in this moment, were not all that unique. Was this one a bit of an outlier? Maybe. It's hard for me to put myself in those shoes. I'm willing to be flexible on this based on what you say after me, but I don't think it was necessarily all that novel. Currently, I have a placeholder of a 1, but I'm willing to move a little bit up. Probably not very far, but, and at least enough to make a noticeable difference. As far as execution, The fact that I think the two lead performances were pretty good, particularly Tommy Lee Jones in my mind. The fact that we did have people actually doing their own singing during these instead of the lip sync that has become more predominant of these musical biopics in the last 20 some years, I think is a refreshing part of it. It was somewhat entertaining. I do think there was some good production design. I don't think the cinematography was really that lacking. It wasn't that like creative. It was a bit safe, but it wasn't bad. So from that standpoint, I have a 3.5. I currently have a 4.5.
I'm a little higher. Okay. I thought the execution and the acting was really good. I gave it a little bit higher score on originality, even though it is kind of a common theme, but the character development and the fact that this is one where it showed the flaws of the individuals, the slapping, the hitting, the yelling, Doolittle's struggle trying to find his place within her world. So I have a 2 for originality, and I thought execution was a 4. So I'm at a 6.
All right. I'm going to go up a half point on originality to a 1.5 and top mine out at a 5. And with your 6, that makes a 5.5 average between the two of us. Classicness. This is the most hard to nail down exactly what this category is. How well the film has aged. Maybe it was ahead of its time. I'll let you go first.
Okay. Been starting now at 6. It was ahead of its time to show the struggles of success and the fact that she had the breakdown, was abusing sleeping pills to get through things. Now, there was a little bit of domestic violence that was taking place, but it was both sides. So I couldn't go up very much. But I think the fact that we're talking about a woman succeeding in a predominantly male world should get some level of classicness for it, some upgrade. So all told, I'm at a 7.
Okay. So first off, in the kind of new realm that we've suggested or introduced between things that have aged poorly, between unintentional and intentional, and potentially negligent, let's say, would you claim that the domestic violence in this, although I don't particularly think it was both sides, that very much seems like a particular statement from a certain president of ours that shall remain nameless on this program. But do you think not including it is too unrealistic given the nature of the background, the culture, the context of the time period that we're talking about? Because otherwise its inclusion, while unlike you, I don't think the inclusion of violence necessarily promotes violence, but I don't think it discourages it. But I'm not sure I would say it's unrealistic.
True. And the only reason I'm saying that it was on both sides is she did hit him back at times. And I did see an interview the real Loretta Lynn did after the movie's release, where she talked about she didn't want to say that the duo was always, was abusive, because whenever he swung or hit or slapped her, she got him back twice. That was her statement.
Okay. However, while it is a little bit ahead of its time for that one particular scene that we mentioned, I think it's undone greatly by the fact that there's this mythology she built up and intentionally lied about for 4 decades plus. The fact that she claimed for a very long time that she was like 12, 13, 14, 15 when she got married just was not true. You could not in Kentucky at the time be less than 16 and get married. It was not legal. And nobody fact checked it until like 2012. And then she just never bothered to respond to it. There are some pretty blatant facts that for some unknown reason whatsoever that they just distort for the sake of the storytelling that I find a little bit disturbing and at best negligent. So for me, this is a 5. Okay, so the average then is a 6 on this one.
So don't need any help with the math on that.
When it's the two of us, I very rarely need help with the math. I can do divided by 2 pretty easily.
Okay.
Until you start throwing around like 4/5 and 5.758,
Yeah.
then I think I'll be fine. All right, rewatchability on this one. To me, it depends on which part of the movie that you're really talking about. In almost no way, if this is coming on during the first half of the movie, am I going to bother to stop and put down the remote or watch this. If it's in the second half, I might consider it. But it's not too long. It does have its moments. It is somewhat endearing, but it's really nothing that I feel like I would ever need to go back to. So for that, I'm going to go with a 3.
Well, I'll make the math real easy for you because I'm also at a 3 because it's been 30 years since I've probably seen this movie, and it may be another 30 years before I see this movie. I suppose I could put it on for my 95th birthday since I already have plenty else scheduled for my 96th birthday. But yeah.
Okay, so we have a 3 average between the two of us. For audience score on this one, we had a 75% for Google users and an 86% for Rotten Tomato users, giving us an 8.05. So to repeat the categories, for Legacy, we had a 5.5. For Impact and Significance, we had an 8.5. For Novelty, a 5.5. For Classicness, a 6. Rewatchability, a 3. And audience score, an 8.05, giving us a final total of 36.55, and currently placing it on our list between Live and Let Die and Cool Hand Luke for number 212.
Okay. All right.
As always, if you have any complaints or feedback, maybe a pat on the back for us for doing a deserved job well done, you can write us at greatestaltimemoviepodcast@gmail.com. You can find us on any of our socials at Gmote Podcast on YouTube, Instagram, Twitter, Letterboxd, or TikTok, or you can find us at the website ronnieduncanstudios.com/Gmote Podcast. All right, let's move to remaining questions on this one. Who in their right mind thought it was good to cast a 32-year-old Sissy Spacek to play a 14-year-old?
What? They had to. First of all, it didn't matter that much because Sissy Spacek looked younger and she was rather slight.
Okay, but she definitely did not pass for 14.
I understand.
She didn't pass for 20.
But by the time she starts getting the guitar and moving forward, she's only 19 at that point in time. How are they going to have some other actress come in and play 4 years?
Like they do in every other movie?
It's just 4 years.
So then don't focus on it so much because it was really, really like weird.
Not nearly as bad as James Stewart, the man who shot Liberty Valance.
So much worse.
Oh, I don't think so.
You had at least a full-grown woman that looked in her early 30s, and I'm serious. She looked in her early 30s, playing a 14-year-old against kids who were probably like 10, 11, 12. And then somehow that's like I couldn't place that she was 14 until somebody had to physically say it. It made no sense, let alone Tommy Lee Jones, who's probably like 40 playing 20.
He wasn't that old.
Do you really want to test me on this one? I'm sure we can look it up. Okay. Tommy Lee Jones.
My guess is he was about 28, 29.
Tommy Lee Jones was born in 1946, and this movie was 1980. So that's what, 34? He's still playing 20? I mean, he was already pretty craggy in this movie.
Yeah.
I don't know. Get some younger actors for the first part of the movie, downsize that portion of it. It probably could have been 15 minutes shorter. You didn't need to place really old actors trying to play 20 years younger than they were.
I know you're having a problem, but oh well, whatever.
If it were like 5 minutes, fine. But the fact that it's like 45 minutes of them playing these like teenagers, early 20-year-olds, and they're not, it was off-putting to me. I'm sorry. It just was.
Okay.
Anyway, did you have any remaining questions?
I did not.
Okay. Anytime we have these nonfiction or these biopic types, it's usually difficult to come up with a whole lot of questions unless you're just simply nitpicking, but okay. All right. So remaining thoughts for the week.
Not really.
Okay. Now that the Oscar season is over and everything is in the rearview mirror for another year, any particular projects that you're going to be working on, or?
I have a couple of ideas I probably will be discussing. I'm going to try and catch up with my Substack writing that I wanted to do or started. I haven't written in it for a couple of months, and it's primarily because of being busy at the office and having other demands, including trying to watch 30-some movies for the Oscars. And so I'm hoping to get into that. Oh, I will make one. I just thought of one remaining question. I would just comment about the demise of the Broccoli family with James Bond and their
So first off,
separation.
That's not a remaining question for coal miner's daughter. And the commentary, you could just put in remaining thoughts. But okay, sure. We can talk about that here. The guy who most resembles a fucking James Bond villain, Jeff Bezos, getting hold of the Bond franchise. Ugh.
He should just walk around with a cat. Don't worry, we're going to be inundated with James Bond because they're already discussing having spin-offs where it's other agents from Bond world who are going to be doing regular TV shows.
I know. And we're going to get IP saturation up the ass. The only two worst places that could be taking over James Bond, one, Netflix.
Yeah.
Okay. And the only thing worse than Netflix getting their hooks into James Bond is the true to life James Bond villain, Elon Musk, getting hold of it.
Yeah.
Mm-mm. So I guess we're just going to be rewatching the old ones because this has no chance of being good anytime soon.
Yeah. Oh, one other commenter as we're talking. Kathleen Kennedy stepping down at the end of the year from overseeing Star Wars.
Yes, Lucasfilm.
So
probably should have happened 5 years ago.
She kind of lost control of the last 3 films, and I blame her for that.
As far as for me, there are projects I'd love to get to. There are films that I would like to see. There are things that I probably need to get to, but I will take a breath to start catching up on some stuff that I've had missing. Although right now, in the thick of a full semester of 1L law school, I don't know if I have very much time to do anything other than eat, breathe, sleep, and shit. So I will say, right about the time where the semester starts to crescendo a little bit, and I may have some more time to devote to things, we have an upcoming episode of the Revisionist Almanac, our only one of the year. So for those of you that prefer that show to our program, you're welcome that we're only on one time this year instead of multiple times. But I got to start watching these 1982 films.
Mm-hmm.
If I'm going to have any shot of being prepared for that. Because I want to say it's like another 30 movies, but at least I've got like 5 months to do it.
Yeah. Well, and Gandhi will just seem like 30 movies.
You know what's good? Gandhi baked. Except that I'm fucking eating and Gandhi's on screen starving and I feel bad. Honestly, I am much more looking forward to watching Gandhi than watching E.T. I know that's like crazy talk to most people, but I don't really care that much for E.T. And it has nothing to do with a scary alien like certain former guests or upcoming guests, I suppose, of this program.
Okay.
Did you forget Sarah Shea is like deathly afraid of E.T., the alien puppet?
I guess I did, but yes.
Yeah. I occasionally post memes of the alien puppet in our group chat with Andrew just to goad the shit out of her. Anyway.
Yeah.
Yeah, I am your son. Regardless, that'll do it for us this week. Thank you for listening. Okay, look, I think we got off on the wrong foot here. That's all you got, lady? 2 wrong feet and fucking ugly shoes. Next week, for our 251st episode, we discuss Erin Brockovich from 2000 for its 25th anniversary. Directed by Steven Soderbergh, written by Susanna Grant, music by Thomas Newman, starring Julia Roberts, Albert Finney, and Aaron Eckhart. You won't want to miss that one, so watch ahead of the show by searching the Real Good app to find where it's streaming for you. That's REELGOOD. Please like, follow, rate, and review, or whatever on whichever platform you have so that more can join in on our fun. You can also email the show at RonnieDuncanStudios.com or at greatestaltimemoviepodcast@gmail.com, or find us on YouTube, Instagram, Twitter, Letterboxd, or TikTok at the handle @GMOPodcast. Greatest Movie of All Time is a production of Ronnie Duncan Studios. Our show is mixed, edited, and written by Thomas Duncan. Our music is thanks to Purple Planet Music. Our distributor is Captivate FM. Our technical provider is Riverside FM.